All right, welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be talking about personal branding. We've got some audio here from Brian Tracy, and I think it's going to be super valuable for all of us.
Yeah, this is like really great stuff. This is the kind of stuff that can make a real difference in your life.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So if you're ready, let's just dive right in.
Let's do it.
Okay. So Brian Tracy starts off by explaining what a brand is.
Right.
And it's actually kind of simple when you get right down to it.
It really is. He defines it as a promise that you make and keep, which is, pretty straightforward.
Mm,
But it's more than that.
yeah.
It's really about like how that promise shapes people's perceptions of you.
Yeah.
It's about the feeling people get when they interact with you.
Right. Like their gut reactions, you don't even think about it, but
It's an emotional thing.
yeah.
He says people decide emotionally and then justify logically.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's almost like we make a decision about a person based on our gut, and then our brain comes up with reasons to back it up later.
Exactly.
Oh,
It's
well.
like first impressions are everything.
Right.
But it's not just first impressions. It's about building a reputation over time.
Yeah.
It's that consistent track record. It's what makes your brand synonymous with certain qualities.
Right. Like Apple.
Exactly. Like Apple.
You think sleek design, you think innovative,
User-friendly.
easy use. Yeah.
They've cultivated that brand image over decades.
Right.
So how do you do that for yourself?
Yeah.
Well, Tracy talks about, for example, IBM.
Right.
They decided that their brand would be built on three core values:
Hmm.
excellence, quality products,
Yeah.
and taking care of their people.
Okay.
And these values were permeated everything they did.
So it's not just coming up with some words, but it's really living it and breathing it.
It's not just about slapping a logo on something. It has to come from a genuine set of principles that you actually live by. And that's where integrity comes in. Tracy is adamant that integrity is the bedrock of a strong personal brand.
Oh, okay. So you're talking of being honest, being true to your word, keeping your promises, all that good stuff.
Exactly. And Tracy tells a great story about Federal Express to illustrate this point. They built their brand on this promise of on-time delivery, 100%.
Right.
And they would go to crazy lengths to uphold that promise. Remember when they rented a helicopter to deliver one single package?
Oh, yeah, during that blizzard, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that a little extreme, though? Come on.
Well, on the surface, maybe.
Yeah.
But think about the message it sent.
Yeah.
They were willing to do whatever it took to keep their promise. And that story is legendary. It became a testament to their commitment to their brand.
Right.
I mean, wouldn't you rather do business with a company that goes above and beyond like that?
Absolutely. But okay, let's get practical. How can somebody who's listening to this right now start to figure out what their own brand attributes are? What are some steps they can take?
Well, Tracy asked some really thought-provoking questions in the seminar. He says things like, how do people introduce you to others?
Right.
What do people say about you when you're not in the room?
Yeah.
And those are really great starting points, I think, for understanding how you are currently perceived.
Yeah. It's almost like taking a look in the mirror.
Yeah.
An honest look in the mirror.
Exactly. And then he follows that up with another really powerful question. He says, think about what one word would be most helpful for people to associate with you?
Ooh, that's a good one.
It is a tough one.
Yeah.
It really forces you to think, to distill what's the essence of what you want to be known for.
Right.
And he tells a story about this comedian named Adam Christing. And Adam Christing rebranded himself as a clean comedian. And just by adding that one word, clean, it totally transformed his business because he's making a very clear promise about his style of humor.
Like a signal flare.
It is.
Attracting the right audience and repelling everyone else.
That's exactly right. That's the power of clarity in branding. So I want you to think about that. If you had to pick just one word to represent your brand, what would it be?
That's a great question. I'm going to be thinking about that for a while, but okay, once you have that figured out, how do you actually make it real? How do you actually go from a word to an actual personal brand that people recognize?
That's where the execution comes in.
Okay.
And Tracy quotes Larry Bossidy. Larry Bossidy wrote a book called Execute. And his philosophy is basically this: success is about consistently doing what you're supposed to do, fulfilling the promises you've made. You said you were going to do something, you do it.
So not just talking the talk, but walking the walk consistently.
Exactly. And he brings up another really great definition. This was from Philip Crosby, the quality expert.
Okay.
And he says, quality is when your product or service does what you said it would do when you sold it, and it continues to do it.
Okay, that makes sense for products and services, but what about, people? How does that work when the product is you?
That is a great point, and this is where I think Tracy's insights get really, really interesting. He argues that we are all selling something, even if it's not a physical product.
Right.
Whether it's our ideas in a meeting, our work ethic to our boss,
Yep.
even our personality in social situations, we're constantly putting ourselves out there. We're selling ourselves in a way.
So this whole idea of personal branding isn't just for like entrepreneurs or CEOs, right?
Yeah.
It's for anybody and everybody, no matter what you do.
Everyone.
Wow. Okay. So what are some of the benefits? Like, why should somebody go through all this trouble?
Well, Tracy paints a really compelling picture. He says that a strong personal brand can help you get jobs easier and faster. You can earn higher salaries. You can get promotions more quickly and, just gain more respect and authority in your field.
So it's almost like a secret weapon in your career toolkit?
Absolutely. It can be a huge advantage in a competitive job market.
Hmm.
But it goes even deeper than that, I think. He talks about how a strong brand can make your word your bond. Like people will just inherently trust your recommendations more. They'll value your opinion more.
So it's not just about climbing the ladder faster. It's about your voice actually mattering more.
Yeah, it's about having real influence, And this ties into a psychological principle called the halo effect, which Tracy also mentions. And basically, the halo effect means that when you're known for being excellent in one area, people just automatically assume that you're probably excellent in other areas as well.
Oh, interesting. Like if somebody's really organized, you just assume that they're probably good at managing their time too.
Exactly. Or if they're like a really creative writer, you might assume that they're also good at coming up with, innovative solutions to problems.
Right, right.
It's like your reputation in one area can create this positive halo that extends to other aspects of your life. But, to get to that point, it takes work. Tracy even suggests that the ultimate vision, like the goal should be to become the best in your chosen field.
Whoa. Okay, now that's pretty ambitious.
It is ambitious, but it's not impossible. And he uses the example of Mercedes-Benz. They've spent decades, cultivating a reputation for quality engineering.
And I remember reading about how they recalled all these cars because of some tiny little flaw that most people probably wouldn't even notice.
Right. But they were willing to do that to protect their brand promise.
Yeah.
And because of that, the Mercedes name has become synonymous with quality and prestige. So think about that. Like, what's one area where you could strive to be the absolute best? What would it take to get there?
That's a great question to think about, but it also makes me wonder, what about the times when protecting your brand means making tough choices, maybe even costly ones? Is it always worth it?
That's a really great question. And Tracy talks about this using the example of the Intel Inside brand. Remember that?
Yeah.
They recalled billions of dollars worth of chips because of some tiny flaw that, like you said, hardly anyone would even notice. It was a huge financial hit to the company.
Right.
But they did it to protect their reputation. And it shows that sometimes protecting your brand means making hard choices even if they're expensive. But in the long run, it's almost always worth it.
Well, I bet there are a lot of people listening who are saying, okay, I'm convinced this is important, but how do I even get started?
That's where Brian Tracy's laws of branding come in. And the first one he talks about is the law of specialization.
Pick a lane and stick with it.
Pretty much. Focus on one area where you want to achieve. And he makes a great point about how easy it can be to get sidetracked, especially if you're talented in multiple areas. He uses the example of Michael Jordan.
Oh, yeah. Didn't work out too well for him, did it?
It didn't. He was a phenomenal basketball player, but his brand was basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to extend it too far actually diluted his overall impact.
Right. That's a great lesson. I think so many of us, we want to be good at everything, right?
Yeah,
But maybe that's not the best approach.
I don't think so. If you're trying to build a strong brand.
So specialization is where it's at, and that's just the first of his laws of branding.
Right.
And there's more.
There's 6 more, actually.
Okay, we'll have to dive into those another time. But for now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about, like the practical stuff. How do you actually like put all these ideas into practice?
Well, like we were talking about earlier, I think awareness is huge. Like just pay attention to how people introduce you in meetings or what words they use to describe your work. Ask for feedback from colleagues you trust.
Right. It's like, I don't know, doing a brand audit on yourself.
Yeah.
Seeing how your product, which is you in this case, how are you being perceived out there?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And once you kind of have a clear picture of that current brand, You can compare it to your ideal brand,
Yeah.
the one-word descriptor we were talking about.
Right.
And then you can start bridging the gap.
So what would that look like? Like, let's say, for example, somebody wants to be known as like the problem solver, but everyone thinks of them as like the creative idea person.
Right.
How do they make that shift?
Well, it's all about aligning your actions with that desired brand.
Okay.
So in that example, you might start proactively offering solutions in meetings, volunteering for projects that require that kind of analytical thinking, even sharing articles or resources, on problem-solving techniques with your team.
So it's all about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And remember, consistency is key here. Building a strong brand takes time and effort. It's not a one-time makeover.
Right.
It's an ongoing
It's
process.
like going to the gym, right?
Yeah,
You don't just go once and all of a sudden you're ripped.
exactly.
Yeah.
You got to keep showing up. You got to
Yeah.
keep putting in the work.
Right, right. But I imagine the results are worth it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Imagine walking into any room and just feeling confident, knowing that people see you as the go-to problem solver, the creative genius, the reliable team player, whatever your desired brand may be.
Right.
That's powerful.
Yeah. But I do wonder, like, are there any downsides to this, to like focusing so much on personal branding?
That's a great question.
Could it ever feel, I don't know, inauthentic or like you're just putting on a show?
Yeah, and I think it's a really insightful question because it gets at the heart of what makes personal branding so powerful or potentially problematic.
Right.
If you're trying to build a brand that isn't aligned with your true values, your true strengths,
Yeah.
it will absolutely feel inauthentic. It's going to feel exhausting, even
Yeah.
miserable.
So it's not about creating this fake persona. It's more about, I don't know, like amplifying the best parts of yourself.
Exactly. It's about understanding those unique gifts that you have
Hmm.
and then figuring out how you can use them to make a positive impact.
Yeah.
But you bring up a good point about downsides. I do think one of the biggest risks is losing sight of like the human element.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's easy to get so caught up in like crafting this perfect image that you forget to just be genuine, connect with people on a human level.
Right.
And ironically, that can actually undermine your brand.
Because people can smell a phony a mile away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Authenticity is so important. People are drawn to those who are genuine and relatable, not those who seem robotic or overly calculated.
So how do you strike that balance? Like, how do you build this strong brand without losing the human touch?
It comes back to integrity. Remember that story about Federal Express?
Oh, yeah.
They weren't just blindly following some brand strategy. They were driven by a deep commitment to their customers, to keeping their promises. And that's what made their actions so authentic and inspiring.
So it's about letting your actions or letting your values drive your actions
Yeah.
and letting that kind of shape your brand.
Exactly. And it brings us back to what Brian Tracy was saying about becoming the best in your field.
Yeah.
It's not about ego. It's not about trying to outshine everyone else. It's about pushing yourself to reach your full potential. It's about using your talents to make a meaningful contribution.
It's about striving for excellence, not just for yourself, but for your industry, for your community.
Yes. And that's the kind of brand, I think, that really resonates with people. It inspires trust and admiration.
Yeah, I love that. So if somebody's listening to this right now, what's like one piece of advice that they could take away from this conversation and start applying today?
I would say spend some time reflecting on your core values. What are those principles that guide your decisions, your actions? What do you stand for?
Okay.
Once you have a clear understanding of those values, then you can start aligning your brand with them.
It's not about projecting an image, but it's about letting your true self kind of shine through.
Exactly. And speaking of shining through, Brian Tracy actually mentioned something that really stuck with me. He said that some people value their integrity so highly that they'd risk their lives to protect it.
Wow.
Yeah, the powerful statement. It makes you think, what are you truly willing to stand for? What lines wouldn't you cross?
Yeah.
Even if it meant sacrificing something really important.
That's a deep question. And it makes me wonder, that's a Dirk question, and it makes me wonder, like, what would our listeners say? Is there anything you value so much that you would risk everything for it?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, it might seem a little bit, I don't know, heavy for a conversation about personal branding, but I think it gets at something really important. When you know what you're willing to fight for, what you absolutely won't compromise on, that's when your brand becomes, well, more than just a bunch of words.
Right.
It becomes a reflection of who you really are, at your core.
So knowing your non-negotiables, those things that you absolutely hold sacred, those can actually strengthen your brand.
Oh, absolutely. It's like having a moral compass. It guides your decisions, it guides your actions, and it keeps your brand on track. And I think when you're operating from that place of integrity, people can just sense it. They trust you more. They respect you more. They're more drawn to you and your brand.
It's like that old saying, right? People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Exactly. So if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking about building your personal brand, start with that question. What am I willing to risk everything for?
It's a tough question, but maybe it's the key to unlocking a brand that's really authentic, one that people will connect with.
I think so. And remember, building a brand is a journey, not a destination. It's like you're always learning, you're growing, you're refining. So don't be afraid to experiment, make mistakes, and evolve. Discover more about yourself and what you want to achieve.
That's a great point. It's not about getting it perfect from day one. It's about putting yourself out there, learning as you go, and keep growing.
Yeah, and the more you align your actions with your values, the more authentic and impactful your brand will become.
That's great. And who knows, maybe you'll inspire others to do the same.
Exactly. That's what it's all about, making a positive impact on the world.
Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today.
Yeah, this has been a really fun conversation.
Yeah, it has. It has. So, to wrap things up, let's leave our listeners with one final thought. We were talking about Brian Tracy's idea of becoming the best, in your field. But what if the best isn't really a destination? What if it's more like a target that's always moving, something you're always aiming for but never quite reach?
That's a great way to put it. I think that speaks to the beauty of the journey.
Right.
That's what makes it so rewarding.
So set those big goals, dream big, and push yourself.
Keep learning, keep growing, and keep building. You never know what you might accomplish.
That's right. And remember, the world is waiting to see the best version of you. That's it for this deep dive. See you next time.